I never thought I'd become the main character in a Hollywood-style suburban drama, right here in this quiet little neighborhood. But then, on a sunny afternoon, Karen, yes, the HOA president and self-proclaimed queen of control of Maple Grove, stood in the middle of the street, waving a stack of violation notices like it was an emergency warrant straight from the Supreme Court. Beside her was the usual cast of neighbors. The guy pretending to walk his dog, the birdwatcher with binoculars, and a couple of stay at home moms dragging out folding chairs as if this were live theater on the sidewalk. Karen cleared her throat, eyes blazing. We have to do something before it's too late. He's destroying the safety and harmony of this community. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others crossed their arms, but every single gaze shifted toward my house, as though I were the villain in some suburban crime thriller. I stood by the window, sipping my coffee, fighting back a laugh. Hard to believe, a whole neighborhood council marching behind one woman like crusaders on a holy mission against my garage. If someone had been filming, the scene alone could have landed on Netflix as a limited series, Karen, Rise of a Suburban Tyrant. But this isn't a sitcom, because I know one thing for sure, this battle won't end with a few fines or some petty gossip. When those shiny black Suburbans roll up to the gates of Maple Grove, everything will change. And Karen, along with her loyal little army, will learn a lesson they'll never forget. I moved to Maple Grove Estates 4 years ago, a neighborhood that looks like it was copy-pasted straight out of a real estate postcard. Lawns trimmed with ruler precision, white picket fences so clean they practically glow, and neighbors who never forget to smile, at least when you're looking. This place is basically an unspoken competition. Who's got the prettiest flower bed, the brightest Christmas lights, the biggest backyard queue? Win that game and you're crowned Model Citizen of the Year. Me? I'm the only one not playing. No BBQs, no Christmas decorations, no HOA Facebook comments. I drive a black SUV with tinted windows, come and go quietly, and my footsteps have that heavy, deliberate sound anyone who's served in the military would recognize instantly. In short, I'm the mystery neighbor every suburban drama needs to keep things interesting. And then there's Karen, the woman who treats this neighborhood like her personal kingdom, with herself as the undisputed queen. She lives for the HOA, breathes the HOA, probably even dreams in HOA bylaws. I swear, if the White House ever created a position called President of the Federal HOA, Karen would be the first in line to run. The very first time I showed up without an American flag on the 4th of July, she gave me a look like I'd just set fire to the Constitution right there in my driveway. From that moment on, in her eyes, I wasn't just another resident. I was a threat. A disruptor of community harmony, all because of one steel-framed garage. The thing is, Karen isn't just annoying. She's got something far more dangerous, HOA power. And here in Maple Grove, that power might as well be a weapon of mass destruction. It all started with neatly folded HOA violation slips tucked under my door. Your garage color doesn't match the approved community palette. Suspicion of storing non-residential items. Failure to submit quarterly inspection report to the board. Reading them, you'd think I was facing federal criminal charges, when in reality, it was all about my garage. But for Karen, that was just the opening act. She began recruiting allies. First came Janet, the neighbor 2 houses down, walking her poodle past my place. Not once, not twice, but 6 times a day. The poor dog was exhausted, but Janet kept peering over like a Cold War spy on assignment. Then there was Robert, the retired accountant who suddenly discovered a burning passion for birdwatching. Oddly enough, his binoculars never seemed to leave the direction of my garage. And of course, there was Susan, Karen's loyal right hand. She went as far as hosting a book club on her front lawn, chairs lined up in rows like an audience at a play, all facing my driveway. Every evening when I pulled in, the whole group would nod and watch like they were enjoying an exclusive performance called The Mysterious Man Unlocks His SUV. Karen dubbed this crew her Neighborhood Watch. I had a different name for them, the Maple Grove Mafia. And this mafia didn't just skulk around, they whispered. I heard a strange humming sound at night. There was an unmarked truck at 2 a.m. He must be hiding something dangerous. Rumors spread faster here than Christmas lights. One person whispers it, And 5 minutes later, the entire neighborhood is convinced I'm building a nuclear reactor in my garage. I just sat inside, sipping my coffee, watching the little red light of my security cameras blink, and thought, keep going, Karen. I'm recording every second of this. The problem is, Karen didn't stop at gossip. She started planning something bigger, something bolder. And that's when this little suburban feud began to turn into a full-blown production. One the entire neighborhood would eventually pay to watch play out to the bitter end. If you think violation notices, nosy stares, and a few petty rumors are bad enough, then you've clearly never dealt with a real Karen. Because a true Karen doesn't stop. Once she's obsessed, she escalates like a bloodthirsty general. And trust me, by that week, Maple Grove looked less like a neighborhood and more like a battlefield. First, I spotted a community safety notice taped to the streetlight in front of my house. Bold red letters screamed, "Warning, suspicious resident, potential danger to children. Avoid house number 17." And yes, house number 17 was mine. Karen even had full-color flyers printed and hand-delivered to every doorstep, like I'd just been featured on America's Most Wanted. But she didn't stop there. The next afternoon, I watched her gather the neighborhood kids on the lawn across from my house for a safety class. Her voice carried straight through my window. "Remember, children, never go near that house. That man could be dangerous. If you see a black SUV parked out front, tell an adult immediately." The kids looked at each other nervously, then turned toward my garage as if it were the villain's lair in a Marvel movie. I swear, all it needed was a gloomy soundtrack, and the scene could have doubled as Cold War propaganda. The neighbors began to shift. Someone out walking their dog would dart across the street the moment I pulled up. Others whispered and pointed like I was too blind to notice. I, of course, stayed calm. My security cameras recorded everything, including Karen's fiery declaration at the HOA meeting. If the authorities won't act, then we will. I will find a way into that garage and bring the truth to light. At that point, you could practically hear a Netflix courtroom audience shouting, "Objection!" But this wasn't television. This was real life. And in real life, one rule always holds. The harder you overplay your hand, the harder you fall. I sat in my living room, watching the crowd cheer for their self-appointed HOA queen, and I smiled. Karen had no idea she'd just signed her own sentence. And I had already set the stage for the grand finale, one this neighborhood would never forget. By this point, I didn't need to guess anymore. Karen would do exactly what every power-obsessed control freak does: cast herself as the hero in the movie she was directing. All I had to do was set the stage. That day, while picking up my mail, I made sure to speak just loud enough into my phone. "Yeah, I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I'll be out for about 2 hours." My voice carried neatly over the fence, landing straight in Karen's ears like a lit match dropped into a gas can. I knew that night she'd be lying awake, plotting her big mission like some bargain bin secret agent. I left the side gate cracked open, just a sliver, the perfect bait for curiosity. Inside, every square foot was wired with motion sensors, infrared cameras, and directional mics. My garage wasn't just a garage. It was a prototype security lab. And my special guest had no idea she was about to walk onto the stage. That evening, I drove off to run errands. Right on schedule, the same time Karen had no doubt circled in her little surveillance notebook. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, golden light stretched across my driveway. In my head, I started the countdown. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Intruder approaching. I could practically picture it. Karen dressed in black, clutching a borrowed crowbar from the community shed, shuffling nervously, but convincing herself she was James Bond, Suburban Edition. I laughed in my car, took a sip of coffee, and turned back toward home. By then, Karen would be trembling with excitement as she finally pried open the steel garage door she'd hated for 4 years. And me? I was cruising back, calm as ever, knowing the curtain was about to rise on the climax of our little play. Karen thought she was in control. But the truth was, I had written the script. And when I pulled into that driveway, Maple Grove would finally see. Sometimes playing the hero without knowing your enemy is the quickest way to make yourself the punchline of a very public joke. My phone lit up with a crystal clear camera feed. Karen crouched at my garage door, the crowbar glinting under the streetlight. She inhaled like an athlete before a big match, and then, clang, jammed the steel hinge with all her suburban fury. After a few desperate blows, the door creaked open, and Karen slipped inside like a bargain bin secret agent, missing only the Mission Impossible theme music. But what greeted her wasn't contraband or some hidden arsenal. It was a cold, mechanical voice echoing through the room. Intruder detected. Please remain still for identification scan. A blue light swept across her face, turning her heavy makeup into something straight out of a horror mask. Her scream ripped through the night, loud enough for the entire block to hear. She stumbled backward, crashing into a metal crate stamped "Property of U.S. Department of Defense." Down she went, face first onto the concrete. Her designer purse exploded across the floor. Lipstick, car keys, even an expensive bottle of perfume scattering under the biometric scanner. Before she could recover, 2 drones shot up from their charging docks, wings buzzing, red lights flashing, cameras locked squarely on her terrified face. The scene looked less like a break-in and more like the climax of a sci-fi thriller. Except, this wasn't Hollywood. This was real. And Karen, unwilling star of the night, had no idea she was playing the lead. She scrambled for the exit, only to slip again, this time slamming down beside a container labeled "Experimental Reconnaissance Equipment, Clearance Level 7 Required." If anyone had been filming, I swear the footage could have gone viral on YouTube with the headline, "HOA Karen Caught by the Military in Neighbor's Garage." Just then, I pulled into the driveway, headlights flooding the wide-open garage. I stepped out slowly, like a theater owner walking in at the exact moment of the climax. While inside, Maple Grove's self-proclaimed HOA queen was crawling across the floor, sobbing about the FBI, prison time, and, though I can't be sure, her shredded dignity. When I stepped into the garage, Karen was still trembling in the glow of the blue lights, drones buzzing overhead. I pressed a single button on the control panel. Instantly, the alarms cut off, leaving behind a silence so sharp it made her flinch. She looked up at me, pale as if she'd just been called to the blackboard for a surprise oral exam. Calmly, I pulled out my phone, first dialing 911, then another number she never could have imagined I had. My voice wasn't panicked, not even raised. Just steady. Yes, I need assistance. There's an unauthorized intruder on the premises. The local cops arrived first. 2 young officers stepped inside, but the moment they checked my credentials, everything shifted. Gone was the stern, officious tone, replaced with, "Yes, sir. No, sir. We'll secure the perimeter, sir." Karen watched in disbelief, eyes wide, clearly unable to process what she was seeing. But the main act came later. Less than an hour after, 3 Black Suburbans rolled into Maple Grove, parking in perfect formation across my driveway. Doors swung open, and men in black suits and sunglasses stepped out in silence so heavy the entire neighborhood held its breath. Neighbors lined the street, mouths hanging open as if watching a scene live from some Hollywood blockbuster. One of the men leaned down, whispered something to Karen. From where I stood, I could see her face shift. Defiance, then confusion, then utter despair. In under 30 seconds, the HOA queen of Maple Grove was reduced to a trembling woman nodding frantically, like a student caught cheating on a test. No one handcuffed her. They didn't need to. The message was clear. Keep quiet and disappear. Around us, whispers rippled through the crowd. Some neighbors covered their mouths in shock. Others pretended to stare at their phones. But every single one of them understood. From that moment on, real power in this neighborhood had never belonged to Karen. And me? I just leaned against my car, arms folded, wearing the faintest smile. Everyone expected sirens, handcuffs, courtroom drama. But sometimes, silence, and 3 Black Suburbans, is far more terrifying than any trial could ever be. The next morning, Maple Grove woke up to a shock. Karen had resigned as HOA president. No emergency meeting, no explanation, just a 2-line letter. For personal reasons, I am stepping down effective immediately. I will not be making further comments. The entire community read it in silence, as if they had just witnessed the Queen of England abdicating her throne, but that was only the opening act. A few weeks later, Karen was in court. I showed up, not because I had to, but because it promised to be entertaining. The courtroom was packed with neighbors, those same people who once applauded Karen for protecting the community, now gathered to watch the curtain fall on her suburban reign. The prosecutor read a list of charges so long, I thought I'd wandered into a legal podcast. Trespassing, property damage, defamation, obstruction of an investigation. The evidence? Undeniable. 4K camera footage, fingerprints on the crowbar, even video of her lecturing children, "Stay away from house number 17." Her lawyer tried to spin it, painting Karen as an overly enthusiastic woman who just cared too much about community safety. But then the prosecutor hit play on the footage. Karen sneaking into my garage, tripping, screaming, drones circling above her head. The entire courtroom burst into laughter. Everyone except the defendant. Finally, the judge, a middle-aged woman with eyes colder than my biometric scanner, looked down at Karen and said, "You had every opportunity to act within the law. Instead, you chose lies and criminal behavior. Now you face the consequences." The gavel came down like thunder. $75,000 in fines, 400 hours of community service, 5 years probation, and a restraining order barring Karen from coming within 500 feet of my house. Oh, and a permanent ban from holding any HOA position during her probation. The blow nearly dropped her to her knees. She clutched the defendant's table, her once commanding face reduced to the shattered mask of defeat. From the back row, I sat with arms crossed, a faint smile on my lips. No Suburbans, no drones, just a judge's gavel and a few lines in a court record. That was all it took to bring down Karen's little empire. And for Maple Grove, the lesson was clearer than ever. Never rally a neighborhood against someone when that someone is used to winning battles Karen couldn't even begin to imagine. Since the day Karen vanished from Maple Grove, the neighborhood has been unnervingly quiet. No more knocks demanding paint inspections. No more community warning flyers shoved under doormats. No more suspicious glares when I pulled into my driveway. People slowly realized something obvious. Life without an HOA queen ruling over them didn't collapse. In fact, it was a hell of a lot more comfortable. Kids started playing in the yards again, this time without flinching whenever they ran past my house. Janet stopped walking her poodle 6 times a day. Robert put away his binoculars. Susan brought her book club back indoors where it belonged. And me? I went on with my quiet routine, sipping coffee in the mornings, occasionally smiling at the memory of those 3 Black Suburbans rolling into the neighborhood. The whole ordeal left Maple Grove with one expensive but simple lesson. Don't confuse curiosity with civic duty, and never let obsession turn you into the villain of your own real-life movie. As for me, I don't need Christmas lights. I don't need backyard barbecues. I don't need to sit through HOA meetings, because now everyone understands. There are some neighbors best left alone. And if one day you hear strange noises coming from my garage, trust me, the smartest thing you can do is keep walking and pretend you never heard a thing.